Okay. Well, oh, this is going to be recorded also, right? So other
It
people
is.
can listen to it. I'm going to just briefly go over the notes that Keith put together, just to highlight on 2020 and then 2021, and then just open it up for questions. And you all probably did this when we attempted to have the annual meeting the other. But anyway, we ended up with our offerings for 2020 at just over 400,072, which is better than 2019.
Now, that was offerings from, that isn't any other outside income like the.
No, just offerings. That's just offerings. And then we ended up, our budget for expenses was for 2020 was 627,000, but they ended up being about 531,000. So we were 16% less than what we had budgeted on the expenses. And I just briefly want to talk about the CARES loan that we got. We received $108,400, and that was used for salaries for the day school and the church, and a few other expenses, maybe some internet or, utilities, allowable expenses. And the loan was forgiven. So it was forgiven in December. So we do not have to pay any of that back. And that went a long ways to helping, us from having to draw on our unrestricted funds at Edward Jones. And then, as Pastor Marcus said, it paid for 5 full pay periods for the day school and the church. So that was very helpful.
Is that listed in here at all?
It is not. It's not yet. No, the other, it's only, yeah.
Oh, the manual, oh.
It's only showing up on the balance sheet right now, and we need to get with Randy Walker to see how we need to record that. So the loan is sitting on the balance sheet, but it needs to be taken off because it's been forgiven. So none of the receipts are showing up on the income statement. The loan isn't. So anyway, so then we had that, and then we talked about the day school. Victoria and Pastor Marcus just talked a little bit about all the new programs and the classes that have come on board and how that transpired. I don't know if that was recorded, Pastor Marcus.
I don't know if it was or not. We now have an infant care program with our day school, which is something we've never had. That is one thing that has drastically changed in the city of Seguin is infant care across the board. We actually have a completely full class with 7 students on a waiting list. We could have an entire day school and not meet the Seguin has. Victoria has been in conversation with those who are leading other programs, and they're just letting their infant care programs go, especially during the pandemic. They just couldn't make the numbers work. So that was one of the first projects and first places to go. However, ours is busting at the seams. We've done some transformation work in the day school now to where we've taken what used to be Victoria's old office on that far side by the playground, and that is going to be certified by the state. It'll become the 2nd infant care class. Because what we have learned, and what I have learned as I've visited with Victoria, is once they start moving, they can no longer be in the same room. So you have to have multiple spaces to begin moving the program. As long as they're having to be held, they can be in one room because they've got their primary places of play. But the moment they become mobile, which is right around that whole 9-month to 10-month mark when they start crawling, they have to be in a space that is set aside for them. So that creates a secondary class. So this will have 2 spaces, and then once they're past that point, then they can go right into kind of more the classroom setting, which then moves them. So, which is really great. And then we also have the kindergarten class that has been added. We used to have kindergarten many eons ago. And it was let go just because of numbers and then transitions in buildings. However, we now have it back, and we've got 15 kids in that program right now. So a total enrollment of 62 is what we have in our day school, which is the largest we've had in my tenure here. We have not had any larger than that. Part of that has to do with the fact we have other classes. So the property stewards have gone gangbusters and getting classrooms open and ready. And now they're using the 3 classrooms on the 2nd floor, as well as the 3, almost 4 classes across the street. So Lots of great things happening. So that's going to kind of not pump the brakes, but kind of let the heartbeat catch up with the body now as we live into these spaces. And having moved some of the offices around at the day school, the primary entrance point now comes in from the parking lot. So folks aren't having to walk around the building anymore. So we did that while things were being retiled over Christmas, so that parents are coming into the building. There's Victoria, there's a teaching assistant right there at the door to take temperatures and take kids to class.
How about getting the kids over here to the?
So everybody starts over there in the morning, and at 8:15, there's this giant train that walks across. They stop traffic, and then they come in, they go to their classrooms, they begin their day at 8:30. That will work for a little while longer until that side begins to really fill up, and then there's just no space for kids. So once that happens, we're going to start using what used to be the RSVP office. That's the largest of those 3 classrooms, is kind of the beginning point for kids on this side of the street. However, having the 2 requires double the staff.
Yeah.
So it's a balance game of making sure expenses are met with income, which is what was a part of one of the documents over there on that table, was a copy of the 2021 day school budget. That should be what you have on the left there. And that is a preliminary budget. It goes to council on Tuesday to be ratified. But the first page of that is the budget, so you can see revenue and all that sort of stuff. The second page is capital expenditures that were either taken, I shouldn't say taken care of, they were voted on in 2020, but they haven't seen their full fruition yet, except for the tile replacement. The tile is finished as of the end of December, but those expenditures were approved last year. So Victoria wanted you to see capital expense wise, we're kind of bridging a year between the 2.
All right, then moving on back to the church. We ended up, and if you're just looking at the 2021 proposed budget, you're not seeing this number because it happened in December. But we ended up transferring $51,170 from Edward Jones from the Selma Smith. We did no money market transfers. And so we ended up transferring $51,170 out of a budgeted $155,806. And so we used a third of what we had budgeted, just in case we needed it. So, and I'd like to reiterate again that we only make those transfers when we need to. So we began the year with Selma Smith and Jihadi. I think it's Selma Smith. I better before I. Let's see. Yeah, Selma Smith and Jihadi, they were at about $316,000, and we ended the year at $266,000 with those 2 funds. All right, then moving on to the 2021 budget. We budgeted offerings at $430,000 as we did in 2020. And as I said, we ended the year with a little over $400,000 in offerings, which is better than what we did in 2019. We had about $383,000 in offerings in 2019. So our total expenditures, our budgeted expenditures are $598,850, which is down from the $627,306 in 2020. So, and then we did have the narrative. I hope people were able to read the narrative that we put together on the budget, so you could see how all the expenses work together to support all of our ministries. And it's in line with our 2021-25 strategic plan. So we have budgeted, let me see, we have budgeted for in 2021, if we need it, $15,000 from money market and $117,650 from Edward Jones. And like I said, that's if we need it. Which is a decrease from the prior year. And The most notable changes to the expenses are the campership, which they were decreased by $11,000, but we explained why that was. And number one, we're not sure if there's going to be any camping in 2021 because of COVID. And we did move some of that budget to other budget line items, a little bit of it. And the benevolence, we increased it by 5%. And I had put over copies of the benevolence, of what we're planning on doing in 2021. And I would like to note, if you see on there, we had what we had budgeted at the beginning of the year for benevolence. We ended up decreasing it during the year, and you'll see that second column. And just because we felt like that was the prudent thing to do in light of what was going on. And then you'll see the new 2021 benevolence.
When it comes to our seminarian, Lori Alvis, we just didn't, it's as if, not that we didn't just pay her tuition as if we have done. Lori transitioned home and has taken a year off. That 1,000 change takes up for 2 semesters. So you'll notice in 2021, it goes up to 500. She's returning to class in the springtime of 22. So we're losing about a year's worth of our benevolence towards her class. That's what that change is, just so you see that.
All right. And then, as we noted in the narrative, some of the other changes that are happening. So I guess I'd like to open it up for questions.
What is the thinking or philosophy behind using monies that aren't from that are in the money market? I mean, I know you can do it. I mean, I know it's legal, but what is the thinking behind that? That when that's gone, we just hope that, I mean, we live in hopes that by that time we've doubled our membership and we're going to be, I mean, we aren't living within our means. We're taking the corn out of the corn crib, and when the corn crib is empty, then what do? I mean, is there any thinking along those lines of what?
I mean, most of the money in the money market is restricted, but there are unrestricted funds in there, and so this 15,000 is from unrestricted. And so what we're showing you here between the money market and the Edward Jones transfers is that we do have the funds, if necessary, that we need to transfer to support our budget. And we are well aware of, that this can't, that we're going to have to look at maybe some other, ways of funding, or look at, tweaking the budget in 2022. But we're showing you, we can fund the budget. We're not, this isn't made up money right here. Yeah, the cash is there. So
but what about the Edward Jones transfer, the 117?
we have that. We have that. Is from the Selma Smith, and then we also have a Jihadi estate that we've never. I mean, we've had that for yeah, and
so are we hoping more people will give to estates to?
Well, the hope is that offering number will change.
Yeah.
So when I came in 2017, we hadn't changed the offering number in 15 years, 10 years, going back 10, 15 years. It had sat at 395 for that whole time. So we put some things in place to hopefully change that, being more strategic with stewardship campaigns and statements of intent in terms of our appeal. We saw a really good return on that in 2020, even though we had the pandemic. We've had a pretty good return of what that hopefully will look like. We've gotten roughly 64 people have pledged for 2021, totaling about $210,000. So we're starting to be more strategic about that. However, what you're pointing out is the reality. It's not sustainable, completely not sustainable.
Right.
So the question becomes, what do we do? How do we change what we're doing in order to make the numbers match? So if by this, we need to come with $117,000 worth of change to make the budget lean fully on offerings versus having to dip into the endowments.
Right.
And that's the magic question. It really is. I mean, council doesn't, I mean, Keith has his report to council every month is with that kind of intentionality by saying we have to be smart about what we're doing. That's a part of the reason why the budget has shifted down $29,000 in this coming years to make changes to how we were seeking to spend the money, being more streamlined. Also, at the same time, we've taken on staff that we didn't originally have back before 2017, so we've had to adjust in some ways. We have changes going into this year that are going to affect our staffing costs. Denise has set in her resignation and will resign at the end of January, so we will have a change in staffing costs that will also be a part of our 2021 story. So we've never had an expense problem. Our church has been incredibly frugal when it comes to what it's doing. It's just that income side and now as people are tightening down now through a prolonged pandemic, we're going to see those ripple effects even more. So that impacts a lot of different things that we hope to do as well. But it's an income problem. How do we change that? How do we make it so that we're not letting people go in terms of staff and those kind of things, but at the same time supporting effective ways to do good ministry?
And this idea or concept of taking money out of what's in the accounts, that's just started in the last couple of years, hasn't it? I mean,
It's been I'd have to say it's been longer than that.
We were very fortunate back, I think the first year I was on council, we got an estate, this 2 blocks across from the day school,
right,
which helped pay for the parking
Paving,
lot and all
right,
that type of thing.
right.
And then about a year or two later, we got $500,000 from the Selma Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and then a year later, Jihadi was 100 and something. Yeah, 178,000, I think, or something like that. And we spent 100,000. The idea was to get the renovations going in the church, and we spent 100,000 on the ramp,
Mm-hmm.
which now seeing what our property stewards could do, and I don't think y'all were all retired yet when we started all that.
Well, we didn't have Gary Miller, but,
Yeah,
and I know I could have put it in, but I don't know what the city of Seguin would have said.
That's a whole nother ballgame, wasn't it?
Yeah, that
You know,
ramp.
I'm used to being out in the country and, okay, I'm gonna do this and I get started with it and I don't have to worry about getting the permission from Seguin and having somebody look over my shoulder and.
It was, the ramp ended up being an educational situation,
Uh-huh.
costly, but it taught us a lot
Uh-huh.
as to how we had to deal with the city and the different ramifications of the building itself.
Yeah.
I mean, changing out vents and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So,
So we were blessed with these monies, but we're hoping that we're gonna be blessed going on to keep doing this. This is what I
think that's where the capital campaign comes in, so that we can go forward. I mean, we have plans, we reeled back on the fellowship renovation, from this huge expansive thing to primarily updating the kitchen and doing the floors and kind of spiffing it up.
Well, I think it's wonderful that we have done what we've done within the church rather than build another building. I mean, we've got this facility, how can we best use what we've got before we, do something else? And I think the things that we've done are good. But it just concerns me that we are living beyond our means. It's just not something that I feel comfortable with.
Right.
That, you know, we're saying we're gonna spend all this money, and in order to do it, we're taking, that isn't renewable, you know?
Well, I can guarantee you that council and, you know, the pastors, we're all looking at what funds we have available in the budget. And, you know, I mean, that's always at the top of our mind. And if we, let's say if we didn't have any of these funds, I mean, our budget would reflect it.
Mhm.
But the celebration in that though is that we had proposed 2/3 more that we were gonna pull from them for 2020, and we didn't. We only used 1/3 of what we had intended. So I think that, one, it shows that we can do it. We can get to where we are at an offering only. However, we've proposed 430 and we got 472. So we're still not quite even at our offering levels, yet we made considerable gains
Yes,
amid a pandemic.
yes.
So I think it shows our congregation's potential.
Mhm.
It also means too that there is a side of evangelism that we have to do, that a growth in our congregation is a part of that. But at the same time, it also is us being very smart with how we spend. We don't just spend because the budget says we can, we spend because we need to. I mean, case in point, when we did the expansion on the second floor, the total cost of that expansion should have been a ramp. It should have been $100,000. But our property stewards did everything that they possibly could, bringing in only the hands that were necessary. And we did the whole project for $22,000. We split that cost with the day school. So as a church, we only saw $10,000 to $12,000 worth of actual expense on that project. So it did, but it goes back to what we've learned down here, that the biggest asset we have is our building. And the giant anchor that we have that holds us back is our building. So
Yeah.
in learning that balance in between of how we deal with that, when we pull open the ceiling, we realize, as Karen was saying, oh, the ductwork is all asbestos too, and we have to move these. There's expense that comes with that. So learning those things made us better aware of what we needed to do. But you're right, it's still unsustainable.
And, well, we need to just acknowledge the wonderful gift we got for the new windows.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I mean,
Right.
I was wondering how all the changes in the day school are being funded, because we also have that playground area that's supposed to be updated. Should have been updated multiple years ago.
Right.
Uh,
Everything has been paid for from their savings that they have accumulated. None of that has come from the church. That has all been money that has either been gifted, donated. There were some gifts that were given, like Marie Vogel had given gifts previous years that had earmarks for things that, for instance, one of the gifts that she had given was for a kitchen. Well, the kitchen was really obsolete and kids bringing their own lunches. So Karen Vogel gave her blessing for that to be reused for other things. So everything the day school has done has been paid from their savings account. None of that has come from the church in that sense. There's been a complete separation of those ministry expenses. So,
and I think, and a lot of people just donating their time, I guess, like the
Yeah.
teachers, they're helping a lot
Yeah.
with the labor part of it.
right. So like they bought paint, the teachers and their families came in and painted all the classrooms. The power washing that was done to clean the building and doing everything's getting ready for it to potentially be painted. I did all that. I did a chunk of it, I should say. I didn't do it all by myself, but I did a chunk of it. So, but all the expenses have been carried by the day school. So the one that you see on that second page, the top lot, that is the expansion of that playground system so that we have a space better suited for little bitty guys. That is on hold right now because the tile became the absolute necessary thing needed to be done. So GC Flooring did that over Christmas. So looking later on in 2021, that might become a reality.
What tile are you talking about?
So the day school building itself was retiled over Christmas.
You mean the floors?
Yes,
floor
ma'am.
is all that yucky carpet.
I bet that was a mess.
It was awful. It was
Oh, my
absolutely awful.
God.
Sandy at GC Flooring did an exceptional job.
Oh, my.
The teachers, their spouses and families cleaned everything out so that the week of Christmas they could be closed, and they hit the ground running. I don't know, was it Tuesday, Alan, by the time they got rolling.
I don't know the timeline
Wow.
specific, but I know that, yeah, when we came down here, for property stewards that one day, yeah,
The whole-
the whole hall was, where in the world all this come
Yeah.
from? It dawned on me that, oh, this is from the day school.
Yeah, wow.
And then all of a sudden, after Christmas, it was all back, you know, gone. It was,
So they laid a coat of floating floor on top of the tile that was there, pulled out all that nasty carpet. The teachers had everything painted. My father-in-law came in and put in cubicle walls. So there are partition walls in some of the classrooms to create hallways for kids to move in and out of the playground.
Oh, my God.
But then all that had to come out so they could do the tile. And then they did the tile. They did all the waxing on Saturday. It dried overnight. And then the teachers spent 8 hours moving everything back in on Sunday so that class could start on Monday, that Monday the 4th. So it was a whirlwind. I had my father-in-law on the phone because one of the walls wouldn't go back together the way he had originally designed it. And anyway, but they did it. But all of that expense that was covered completely by the day school. None of that was covered by the church. However, I don't know if we could put a cost on or a number on what was given donation wise by the property stewards, by other folks who made all those other pieces happen. Because that was just, it's insurmountable. It wouldn't be possible to do what we're doing. So, and Alan has overseen the Window World project from the very get-go.
And how is that? I mean, I know there were some problems, but is everything?
The only item that I have left that is on the list is, Pastor Marcus's office is a window screen.
Uh-huh.
There is some clips missing off the screen,
Mhm.
and,
Our house has a lot of those.
and so they're supposed to do that. And I guess I'm being kind of selfish in a way. I'm not gonna just come out and say it. They're not getting paid until they repair it.
Yeah.
And I'm not over there beating on their door to get it repaired because I want to hold that money.
But the ceiling is all okay, the seals, there was some problem with this.
Yes, we brought in a company, I don't have it in front of me. They did I believe, an excellent job. There was some question about caulking from Window World. And actually, one of the property stewards lives in New Braunfels, so he dropped by. They gave him several tubes of the caulking that was caulked, and so with this beautiful weather that we have outside, it should be interesting to see what is happening.
Yeah, we'll check.
Plus, I don't want to get on that subject, but the roof
I
also.
was just gonna say,
The roof.
check to see if the,
Say, Joe and Sharon are are online here. Joe has been fighting that for a year and a half. So Joe, do you want to say anything to that, Sharon? I don't know if he's near you or if he wants to say anything about it.
Yeah, what's the latest on the roof?
No, I'm listening and I'm satisfied with what I've heard so far.
Okay. Anything you want to add about the roof?
We need to get him out here and he's pretending we're not here, I guess. We've still got minimal leakage. And I found what I'll call a void up there, and I've asked him to define it and cure it if it's a problem. And we really don't know whether it's a problem or not. It's the only clue. They've done probably 2 patches and it still hasn't cut off that 3rd floor leak we're getting. It's minimal. It's not getting beyond the 3rd floor. At its worst, it was getting down into the church area, and it's not doing it now. So that's where we stand on that. The last commo I had with him, an email, he said, okay, let's make a plan, and I haven't heard from him. That's where it stands.
Did you catch all of that?
No.
Sorry, the speakers on this laptop are just atrocious. Joe said that they've done 2 patches. They've done the initial repair of the roof. They've done 2 additional patches to the project. They did one part at the very beginning without a whole lot of oversight, so they came back and redid some of that. There is one void that Joe is saying that he has identified. He has reached back out to Jeff, who is the owner of the company, who has said, let's put a plan in place, and that's the last that we've heard of it. However, the leakage is very minimal and is only on the 3rd floor. If you remember that one Sunday we all came, it had made its way all the way down into the chapel and into the old organ area and all that. That has since been solved. That doesn't happen anymore. However, having tenants on the 3rd floor who are renting from us, it certainly is a continued, I know it's a thorn in Joe's side as he deals with it, but it is now contained just to that floor.
But
So
the overall thought on the roof is that we can make do for the next 5-10 years with patches?
yes, only because we've been told by various companies not to touch the main roof of the sanctuary.
Okay.
It's $1 million plus to get that abated and redone. However, we had groups out of Austin come, we had groups out of New Braunfels, I think was the other one that came, and they all said, the roof will outlast the building underneath it,
Wonderful.
but don't walk on it.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't walk on it. So
Uh-huh.
what they've done, what Sturm Enterprises has done is replace the flat roof where the AC units are, plus the shingle roof, correct, Alan, going east?
Yeah.
But we haven't touched the original building, except for some small parts near the bottom that required additional flashing and other things to get underneath the tile. So when the water comes down, it's not going behind itself. It's
Okay.
going on top of some sort of a membrane.
Okay, so it's this part that's the cause of the leaks and that,
It's a valley where all 3
okay,
types of material come
together.
together. Yes,
Uh-huh.
that's where the issue is now.
And then I have a question about the room down, the multipurpose room by that part over there. Is that, now I know they've done a lot of work on the outside to keep the water going down in there, and then they were gonna redo the floor, or where does that stand? You know,
Are you talking about the fellowship hall?
in the fellowship hall.
Oh, with the windows, maybe where the
No,
windows
you know,
are?
They dug along the edge outside or something, and because there was some seepage coming in,
Oh, by the
Oh.
tower. Is that
power?
well, I don't know, I thought it was all the way around,
No.
but, I
No.
mean, are there plans to redo anything in the fellowship hall?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. That's a part of the capital campaign Karen was talking about.
Okay.
That will involve new floors, new walls, new tile, lighting, painting, kitchen.
Okay, so that's part of the.
But
capital-
but the water issue though, it was determined, so that when they were digging,
Yeah,
that was in front of the tower itself. And what the thought was is that there was a membrane, a sealant that had, and it has deteriorated on the outside, that the water was coming through that into the building.
mhm,
However, what it was determined is those giant wells, and correct me because you two have been on the front of this more than I have, the giant wells that are outside the windows
right,
were completely clogged. They're filling up and the water was going through the windows into the building.
oh, wow,
They have all since been blown out, everything.
And you saw probably on the south side over there on Gonzales,
yeah,
what we found there is, and to help out, it was that ground was more going this way back toward the fellowship
Building.
hall.
Yeah.
oh,
And then we have the crepe myrtles there, which the roots and all that, they've been digging all that out so that it will drain to the drain that's in place to take it out to the architect. I don't know, he's designed, well, they have probably put the almost like a flashing at the ground, to keep the water from going down along the wall of the fellowship hall, to push it out.
Unfortunately, one of the things about the way the church is and especially to the north over here, this area,
mhm,
the ground actually raises up.
oh.
And,
Let's bring it
and
down.
so it drains back towards the church to a certain degree.
Mhm,
And we have spent, the property stewards have spent many hours up on a ladder on the third floor, cleaning out gutters, draining, because when we started the project, just about all the gutters, not completely every one of them, were clogged.
Oh,
And because of the oak tree in the corner over here, the leaves are getting in it. We're trying to find a gutter guard to go over it so we can keep the leaves out so they don't go down the gutter and get in where it can rain
all
or
that stuff up, yeah.
stop up. But that's been a kind of a summertime project because nobody, as much as we had the second floor up here that we needed to get done. But since we've been working on the gutters and we have identified, the drainage issues, we really haven't seen the moisture in Fellowship Hall and even along Bowie Street over here.
Wow.
But there still may be some that gets in because one of the things that when we were putting in, especially the windows in the Fellowship Hall, a lot of kind of, I want to say, damage, that a lot of the stucco in there was broken out, and that was due because of moisture. And there was some debate, did Window World get kind of carried away, or was this something kind of like rotten wood?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, when I started looking into it more, I hate to say that I went into the chapel and where our nice, beautiful stained glass windows
Yeah.
are, you can actually see where repair work has been done because of moisture. And at some point in the future, we're probably going to have more repair work around those windows because moisture is still getting in at that point, around those windows somehow. And so that material is deteriorating. So I figured, well, if it's happening there and we've already done something, yeah, it's basically like trying to put in a new window of rotten wood.
Good, yeah.
And so that's where we ended up spending a little bit more money than we had anticipated for the windows. But we were also, just in a sense, blessed that we had 3 bids. One of them was like $10,000 plus. The second one came in, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, right around 7. And then we had this other gentleman that came in, and it was about $3,200. He did a marvelous job repairing those things, and we basically, if we got to do some other repair work, we know who we can go to find,
Right,
that's going to do a wonderful job for us. And so,
Sounds like a multiplicity of problems.
Yeah.
Mainly drainage, but
yeah,
it causes a lot of problems.
yeah.
And that was one of the things that Karen was bringing up too, in the capital campaign, in the projects. One of the things that our architect has proposed is putting in a curtain up against the building that is made of packed material with a plastic barrier and rock, so that we're pushing the initial 2 to 3 feet of water away from the building as far as we can, so that it's not sitting up against the building causing any problems later on, whether it's seeping in around the windows with some of the masonry work, or just, it shouldn't be up against the building,
Yeah.
period. So that's one of the proposals. However, as Alan pointed out, it can't go real far before it starts going uphill. So then, as
Yeah.
Karen said, there are garden drains
Yes.
that if we can get the water angled towards that,
Yeah.
then we have a better chance of it getting away from the building. But when we did the topographical survey of the property, there's like a 1-inch drop from the building to the curb. And in most areas though, it goes up. So even if we could get the water that far away, it's still not gonna do any
No.
good.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, part of that has to do with the fact that our church is built in a unique way, in a unique spot. But the ground now is being tempered away from the building, drug out of that. But up until that point, all the lawn clippings, it's all being blown
Yeah.
back toward the buildings, so.
Yeah. An example that we've come into, the old, elevator.
Yep.
There was a drain by the double doors and, well, that was completely clogged. So water was just pooling up and standing there. And we was looking at, when we were looking at the, ramp project, where that, well, basically that's where that water was coming from, was that water that was standing there because it was just not able to go there. It was just,
Yeah.
you know, until it built up enough that it could flow the other way, but it was still, you know, against the, and so since then, we went in and actually modified that whole drain and everything, so,
Is that where we put the rocks,
yeah, we put the rocks in
Took all
and everything.
the dirt
Yeah,
away?
keep the weight and everything.
Like you said, the building is a blessing and a curse.
Right, right. And that becomes the balance on everything from budgets to ministry. I mean, how we better use the building as a constant conversation, creating spaces like the quilting area where we can do
Yeah.
incredible ministry where it's everybody's together, and then creating space for other organizations to be in the building too, while supporting everything that we want to be doing. And so, well, part of that, when this was a question you had raised when we gathered for the annual meeting, was the Luther House. Is what are we doing with that? Well, that's a phase we haven't even gotten to yet because of the changes we've seen here.
Yeah.
But now I think that we've gotten the phase 1 task force, Karen was on that task force along with a number of other folks, saw that through the proposal that we'll have for the capital campaign. Once that gets underway, hopefully later on this spring, that's one piece that council's taking up this month, is the capital campaign itself. What does that look like and what is that going to accomplish? Those numbers set within the context of what are we looking at with our consultants? Is it feasible to do what we're looking at? Then we can start focusing on these other areas that we want to do something with.
Is
So-
the Luther House gonna be part of the capital campaign?
It isn't because we haven't spent any time with it. This particular focus will be just phase 1. We have the resolution that brings the day school and church capital campaigns together. However, with what we've accomplished on the second floor per the day school, and this is in conversation with Victoria and her staff, they're going to live into those spaces, let the heart catch up with the body a little bit more, and then move forward. One of the proposals that Mark has got is a building that comes off of the current ARC, the big brown building now, and goes right on that Alexander property, but it's a pole barn. It's a metal building that we can then live into. We don't have to finish the whole thing overnight. So that may be a part of that, depending on how much capital we think we as a congregation can feasibly raise. But we've doubled the size of the day school with just using what we have. So we don't have quite as much of at least from my perspective. So phase 2 will then be sanctuary. If we go with our original plan, sanctuary, making it accessible, how we update some things in there, some sound issues that we know we constantly have, and then the Luther House. What do we do with that as well? So, and I've got some ideas as to what we can.
It'd be wonderful to have that as a place for the community to have services of different
Absolutely,
kinds. And,
absolutely.
you know, not that it has to be us using it, but making it available
Right.
to others.
Well, and then Doug Parker thought he had that grant,
Yeah,
and
I
then
know.
all that changed.
Yeah, that
So-
would be great.
And I mean, and we can find those, which is kind of what Spirit of Joy has done. That's the tactic they're using, is finding those outside
Right.
organizations to be a part of that. And we can still use that as a model. That's a very effective model. GVCCC would have been beautiful because it would have been
Yeah.
200,000,
Yeah.
bam, you can do
Yeah.
whatever you want.
Right.
But I think going back to it and saying, how do we make it a community element? How do we make it not only a part of our ministry, but how does it become a resource for the community
Right.
at large? I visited with a classmate of mine from a high school. Her name is Sarah Woosley. She is a part of what is called the Impact Guild of San Antonio. And her company goes in and buys old office buildings and then renovates them and creates very inexpensive office suites that folks use almost rent free for their first year to year and a half. And then after that, they start paying rent. But it gives entrepreneurs and small businesses a chance to get off the ground. She focuses in the social sector. So this is stuff, medical needs, CHIP, that kind of stuff. That's what her, but she said the amount of need for that, just to give people that boost. She said she's got folks that are there for a year and a half maybe, and then they're gone. Their business has grown to the point. Other folks like, no, I'll sign on at $300 a month or $400 a month, and then it becomes a source of income that's then paying for the building. So I think there is some really unique ways we could do
Very
that.
ingenious way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think at that point having a 2-story building in the shape that ours is in would be the best way. I think having a single story where you're not having to do with stairs or, Lord, let's not have to go back to an elevator conversation at any point in time. But also, can we make it energy efficient to where it's not a drain? All those kind of things. But we've just,
Has it ever been thought about selling it? I mean,
Oh, yeah, they had, I wasn't here at the time, but
I mean,
I don't know, Alan, were you here?
I wasn't on council.
No, no, this was years even before I was here, where they had big arguments
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
And,
Because I remember, James Cuddy Deeps,
yeah.
when he was on council,
Uh-huh.
there was even discussions probably 20 plus years ago about that building. And, there was a faction in the church that, said the best thing that we could ever do with that building is tear it down.
Oh.
So it went from one extreme,
Yeah.
so but we still got it.
And that was 20 years ago, yeah.
we're I shouldn't say constantly, but we've had a number of developers ask about it. My only hesitation is it really landlocks us if we do that. We lose our footprint. It doesn't cost us anything other than the upkeep and that to hold on to it for a little longer until we can figure out, because we don't pay tax on it. It's part of the church. However, we do have folks that are developing, not where the Lutheran House is, but 2 doors down, the big yellow house, is it the Janssen house that one used right by the school? That was bought. I went to court probably about 6 months ago as that group that was developing it called all of the homeowners and businesses together for that. And they're redeveloping that into some kind of a commercial business. So there are
And the one behind it that was falling down,
yes.
somebody's doing something with that.
So their grandson is in our day school. That big, beautiful blue house. Yeah, they have done incredible work. Yeah, their grandson. So their daughter lives 2 doors down in the Rock House that they've also redone. And they may have been part of the energy behind why this house that's up here now is now boarded up and all that. But so there is some life coming back into this area. But yeah, but we do have people who ask about it. And, well, what would you sell it for?
Yeah.
I always say 6 million. I think that's a really good starting number. So one day someone might say yes. I don't know.
I just, it's my bugaboo with Pastor Kelsey is a 3% increase in that. I was just wondering if she's still gonna be at TLU? No.
So she has, she supported Katie Wallace, who is the interim campus pastor there now, because Katie is not ordained yet. But because of all the COVID stuff, they moved Kelsey to 5 hours a week or something of that nature, and she just let it go. So she hasn't been back to TLU since November. October or November. I think she was back for whatever they had the pastors do for graduation. Everyone recorded a prayer or something, but no, she's not at TLU anymore.
I was all for that, but I did have issues with continuing to pay our salary and then she get paid on top of that.
Sure.
Because I don't know any employers that pay full-time salary and then have a part-time person having a part-time job in the midst of it. Now, had the funds come back to the church, that would have
I
been
agree.
great.
I agree.
But that other thing just really bugged me. So,
Yeah, and TLU is still in that waiting game. I don't know what they're gonna do with that position, so, yeah. We've actually been pushing very hard for the bishop to give special dispensation to the campus pastor, even though she's not ordained, to allow her to do communion. Because that's all that Pastor Kelsey was doing communion. And that seemed to be a well waste of someone's time to hold a communion service when we have the possibilities of giving someone the ability to do that in other congregations. Seems really weird.
And then I had a question, Pastor Marcus, is the new financial person going to be full-time or part-time?
Currently, we're working from a part-time potential right now.
Okay,
So 15 hours, is that what we put in that?
I think it is.
Yeah, 15 hours is what we're looking at right now, Donna.
okay.
Did you hear the question?
Yes.
Okay.
and that actually fits before we hired on folks, the people that we were talking to and all were 15-hour people at other churches. So,
Mhm.
What we currently have, we've got some, it's snowing in Manor. Just so
Oh,
you know.
wow.
Krista just says, be safe when you drive home. We have a couple of feelers out. Susan has agreed to help us in the transition, so that's been an absolute godsend.
Yes.
Denise is here through the end of the month, so she's doing all of the 1099s, the 941s, the final quarters of
The
payroll tax,
W-2s.
W-2s,
Yeah.
all that. And then what we're working on right now is that now that TLU has a full-fledged master's CPA program,
wow,
can we work that into a possibility to
that'd be
where
cool.
we've got someone who's gifted like Susan or
Right.
Keith who becomes that.
Yeah.
We've also got other folks in the congregation that we can reach out to and contract with. Kim Ilhart is one of them. Susan and I have a meeting with, just, I mean, full transparency. We had a meeting with her about what would it look like for a CPA firm to step in part-time and help with some of those things.
Mhm.
We use systems that she's not familiar with. We use Realm. She's a QuickBooks person, but that's all negotiable too. However, with TLU there, we have master's level students who could very easily do that, doing things in-house and that kind of stuff. So keeping all those options open. And the other side of that too would be to say, we go back and we hire somebody. We go back to that and we've got the job descriptions and those things. So right now we have an HR company. It's called K&J HR Solutions out of Dallas. They have going through personnel policies and getting us all the posters and things that have to hang and all that. We have a contract potentially with them to go over and look over stuff. Denise Huffnagel did work right before she retired for us back in 2017. When I first came on, she helped us overview everything. Actually, it's when we were sitting side by side in offices. Kimberly Jones, who works for K&J, she'll then update all of our personnel policies and make sure that we're running on the correct. All that stuff will be a part of, what is it called in here when we have those contracts?
Oh, it's,
Just so you know where it's coming from.
let's see, where is it? Professional services? I think? It
There it
might
is.
be there.
Professional services. So we've put some of that in there. That way we can help. She can rebuild and do whatever she needs to do. But the nice thing about what K&J does is it's only project based. So if they're not updating anything, we're not paying them anything. It's just not an open-ended contract, unlike some other service agreements. And then we'll be able to negotiate. Then we can work through, do we do payroll as a third party, or does payroll still done in-house? Or do we need to then find a payroll company? ADP is a big company that does that. So we have a lot of options. Keith has got a lot of experience with ADP. I think anyone in Central Texas has probably had ADP at some point in time run their payroll. But anyway, so we have all of those options that are there as well. that will help us negotiate the next couple of weeks and figure out how to go beyond that.
As well as keeping payroll in-house.
Right,
too.
as well as keeping payroll in
Yeah,
house,
we're
which is a
looking at
very,
that.
very easy thing to, I say easy, I don't do any of that sort of stuff.
At one point, I don't know, 6 years ago or more, they had a local accounting firm, that didn't work at all, because they didn't understand the intricacy of the complexity, I guess, of church finances.
And Susan and I spent a lot of time visiting about that, because that was one of the issues that came up was if we were to go back to that, we would really have to make sure we're all on the same page. The restricted accounts seem to catch people up. The nice thing about with Kim and her firm is she has a church person. That's all that accountant does is just church work. So she understands the restricted accounts and how things are paid. Even taxes are weird. So understanding all that. However, the more that we've talked about it and the more that Susan has been here, just doing it in-house at a limited capacity just makes a lot of sense
It
too.
would be
So
neat to have an intern situation with PLU.
yeah, it would be,
That would be.
because my accounting professor is still there. And I've talked with Dr. Cook, Sally Cook, who's a member at University United Methodist Church in San Antonio. She is their treasurer. And so I've talked with her about what would this look like? I don't want to breach any confidentialities, but it's a learning possibility, man, for someone to go right from class right into the office to where they would have folks like Susan overseeing them. And if we as a congregation felt, we really need another set of eyes, we've got folks like Kim, or even, Olkey is the one that we had used prior. We have a lot of CPA firms that we can then say, hey, can you look this over? Plus, we have an annual review with Randy Walker's a CPA, so that's a part of our stuff too. So we have a lot of fail safes that we can use. But yeah, I would love to see that. I think it would be really, really spectacular. Open up that for music. We're employing half the TLU at the day school anyway as teaching aides, so. And now 4 of them are becoming education majors, so we're doing good. But even church musicians, what would that look
That
like?
that would be wonderful.
I think it would be some neat possibilities
Well,
with
it's
that.
such a blessing to have people like these folks that are so talented in their special areas that they can contribute so much. That's fantastic. I have a question about now the pastoral assistant, is that,
Is that Pastor John?
is that Pastor John?
Yes.
And the visitation pastor is,
Warrenson.
yeah,
Pastor
that's in San Antonio.
That's for San Antonio.
Right.
Okay,
right.
so that,
Yeah.
he helps with people who are in San Antonio in hospitals, is that?
That is correct. That is correct. And then Pastor John, as our visitation pastor, he oversees all of our nursing home services,
Okay, and,
hospital visitation, hospital rotation, and home care visits.
okay,
Beverly, were you asking about the pastoral assistant?
uh-huh.
Yeah, that is John. And then he's also picking up the nursing homes.
Yeah.
Whereas Tom used to do some of that, now
Yeah.
Pastor
They're
John
all
will
under
be
Pastor
doing,
John's.
yeah.
So we used to have Pastor Darwin used to fall under other places in the budget. I believe we moved all of them under pastors to create some semblance of consistency. So the visitation pastor and pastoral assistant. Visitation pastor, the 517020,
Mhm.
that is Pastor Darwin. And the 517040 is Pastor John.
And we used to have a line item for supply pastors and we do not have that anymore.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
enough of us
Yeah.
that we don't really have that as a need.
But then Donna also does, how is Donna's role? Well, she does the telephone things and things like that versus Pastor John goes out to the.
Right. So Donna is over. She's actually on the call. Donna's here. Donna is the program side of what we do. So the Life After Loss, the congregational care programming for bereavement, the handling of the Food Fund and Fellowship groups. So more of the program side of how we care for the congregation is what.
And educational side too.
Education stuff that we've partnered with NAMI, we've partnered with other congregations putting together things, and we've also partnered with Porter Loring for Pastor Darwin for bereavement care, caregiver care, and we were working on Alzheimer's stuff a lot in 2019 that got kind of paused because of 2020.
How is the custodian situation working?
So we have reduced Pauline's hours to 16 hours a week because the bulk of the day school on the second floor is being done by Aiden, who's the, so with us not really using much of the space, when she came back, I had my Karen Weinstein nurse insurance person in my head. Where is the full release letter from the doctor? So when we got that, Pauline and I sat down, and she was grateful to have something to come back to, however, was not looking to be anywhere where she was. So council sat down and said, based on what we see needed, can you do what you were doing with these limitations at 16 a week? And she said yes. So she works Monday through Thursday for 4 hours a day. She comes in at 4:30 still and does everything prior to when students get here so that she's not in the floor with cleaning supplies and all that. But it allows her to be grandma, take kids to school as she had done before. So that's what she has. So that's been 16 hours a week is where her reduction is.
If we actually ever get back to full services, I would recommend that we go with a service.
Yeah.
Because she really shouldn't be lifting and all that type of thing.
Absolutely. We've tried to, I've had that conversation with her about what her limitations are, and what the letter says is when you feel pain, stop. That's what the doctor has told her. And I was like, well, let's not get there. How about you just not lift anything that's super heavy? So I think there's definitely a limitation, but what we had found, right, is when I had first come on was, the companies can do it in 3 hours and do it so quickly. Having someone on the back burner, though, if there's a funeral or a wedding or something like even snow, we've got someone who can clean quickly. But with Aiden cleaning both sides of the street and taking a bulk of the second floor, there's just not a lot right now to do.
Wow.
And plus everyone else has been helping out keeping the sanctuary clean and wiping things down. Even when we had those few weeks, practically when the service was done, volunteers were cleaning the sanctuary. So there was no additional need for that. So, but yeah. The other big thing that we did, as Susan talked about, we took the campership. So we had tucked away about $11,000, $11,000 to $13,000 each year into what we were calling camperships. And so what I did is I sat down and I divided out that money and put it into our youth programming, in program development and travel. We shrunk our VBS stuff because we've gained another congregation. Lord help us, we can actually do one this summer. First Presbyterian Church has been a partner with us since the pandemic started. Pastor Andy Limlin has joined us on a number of fronts. He's a solo pastor and is the solo child caring for two very, very sick parents. He's about 27 years old and his parents live in Austin. And so he's just been running ragged. However, the congregation has shown great excitement in being a part of our VBS. We want to get back into that. So last year they gave us $500 towards whatever they wanted to do. So you'll see a reduction in VBS costs because now they want to be a part of it, as well as Spirit of Joy wants to be a part of it still. So our costs just continue to be less because we're spreading it out over the course of things. Currently, all of our summer programming is still going to happen. Pastor Kelsey just finished all of the paperwork on that. However, as Susan pointed out, if the American Camping Association deems that we can't do some things, then they're gonna start letting programs go. Our Vacation Bible School program is very limited this year. The numbers are very, very small because camp is not sure if they're going to even have the staff to carry off some of these programs. So, but you'll see all that changes in here as well, just because we don't anticipate a big camping year. As of right now, we've got about 9 or 12 kids going to camp, just because that's just where we are. We just don't have the numbers to support it, because either kids are doing other things or parents are saying, I don't know. Last year it was really weird. Our kids were put in these little, like little cubicles. You just move in your little cubicle part. But we'll see what happens. We won't know any of those ACA stuff until the beginning of March. They won't release any of that. They're waiting on the federal government to say how does summer camps are impacted by various things, and then has to trickle down to the state. And each state has to make their own declaration. And our camps are in 3 different counties, so that gets interpreted 3 different ways. But anyway, but just so that you know some of those changes that were happening, it seemed to go back to what you originally had said, Ben, too. It just seemed illogical. We keep putting all this money here, and we're not using it, we're not spending it. Let's put it into the programming so that we know where it is. But if we're not going to spend it, quit putting it in the budget. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So fundraising and all those kind of things we've done, from tamales and other things, that's all on the restricted side. And we have our practices, we use restricted funds before we use operating budget. So if there's money raised by youth for $1,500, that gets used before we tap into here. All of our deposits that we paid last year roll over to this year. So all of our camping costs, instead of it costing normally $2,400 or $2,500, it only cost us $1,000 this year, because all of our deposits rolled over. So that was really good. We didn't have those big expenditures.
You understand what the restricted funds are, but it's like,
You
Chris,
can only spend it for certain things.
right, it's like we found out when I was back that, like Christian Covered, people were donating to it, but those funds were going into that account never to leave. And so now that's finally, those funds are moving. That's what you were saying, like OP really got confused with those restricted funds.
Right, absolutely. One of the other CP firms, because there's a laundry list. I mean, that's the oddity about being a nonprofit church, is that people are like, I want to give for paper clips. And it's like, well, so then the blessing of that too is like when Marie Vogel made a substantial gift. Well, when Marie passed, we didn't have to go back to the family and say, okay, we don't need any more paper clips. However, what we do need are pens. So we get the permission to do that. But the idea was, just as Karen was saying, the money was going there and it wasn't leaving. It wasn't being used in the sense that as it should be. So we've changed that method to where if someone gave a $500 gift for us to go to camp, that pays those bills so that we can go to camp, and then we tap into the operating side. So that folks can actually look at that and say, oh, there's my $200 gift. Well, there it went. It's now paid for, 2 kids, their deposits for camp, or however we want that to happen. So that's the idea. We're at our 10:30 mark. So glad we're all in worship. It's live. Thank you, Donna. Did you have any other questions?
No,
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for being with us. And Joe and Sharon, Liz Whitten was on a second ago too. So thank you all for being with us this morning. I appreciate it.
Y'all be careful out there.
Yes. I don't know if you heard or not, but Kristen said it's snowing in Manor. So
Yeah. I'm sure my granddaughter wants it to be snowing in Austin too. So I'll probably hear and get pictures today if it does.
Very nice. You all be well and be blessed. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.